Alright guys, welcome back to another horror room movie review, and today is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 from 1986. This movie had a budget of $4 million, only made $8 at the box office, but personally I enjoyed this movie. I have a lot of fond memories of this one. It's definitely different, but it still has a lot of great stuff in it, and it is kind of a different setting for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family. They're not like in the woods. They're not in the farmhouse out in the desert. So it is kind of a different take on the typical Texas Chainsaw Massacre story, and it definitely stands out because of that. Plus you have Bill Moseley doing a great job as Chop Top in this movie. But it opens up with a recap of what happened to the first 5 kids. You have Sally, who basically lost her mind from what happened to her. She tells the police she escaped from a window in hell, which I thought was a great line. And the police didn't find any evidence of murders. They didn't find any suspects, which strikes me as odd. But they didn't find anything. However, chainsaw murders have persisted throughout Texas to this day. So that's kind of like the opening they give you for this movie. I thought it was weird they couldn't find anything. I mean, they know Sally's name, so they could figure out that her grandfather had a house in that area, and that right across the street was the serial killer house, where they had tons of cars from past victims, missing persons, vehicles would have been there, and all this evidence, but they couldn't find anything. So I don't know how they could have cleaned up all of that, all those bones and all of that junk, just in such a short amount of time. But back to the present day, we see these 2 douchebags, and they're driving down the road. These 2 high school kids or something, I don't know what they're supposed to be, but they're acting obnoxious. They have a gun, they're shooting at signs as they drive by. It's just completely ridiculous. They call Stretch, who is a local DJ, and she's listening to this, and she doesn't want to hear this. She's like, come on guys, just hang up now. And they see a truck coming, and they decide to play chicken with it, which causes the truck to drive off the side of the road. We don't see who's driving the truck, but obviously they would be pretty pissed off. So later that night, the kids call back, and Rick the Prick, one of the kids, that's his DJ name, I guess, he thinks. And he calls her and says that he wants to hear or see bright lights, big titties. And it's been a very, very long time since I've watched this movie. And this scene definitely brought back a lot of memories. I remembered this scene, him saying bright lights, big titties, before I watched this movie again. Just from all the years ago that I watched this movie, I definitely still remembered that line. And they come up to a bridge, and of course we see the truck that they ran off the road earlier, and Leatherface pops out of the truck. They're driving next to each other, and he jumps up. He's wearing this corpse, and he's acting like a puppeteer, kind of. The corpse, they're playing this 80s music, and he's kind of dancing with the corpse and the chainsaw. It is so funny and just so goofy looking. I really love this part. And I also really like this scene because it's Leatherface in the city. This movie doesn't take place like out in the farmhouse. It doesn't take place in the woods or anywhere like that. It's really like the amusement park and the city. So I always like this movie just because of that. It's kind of like a different take instead of the typical Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie where they're out in the farm, middle of nowhere. This one they're in, I think, Dallas. So it was kind of a unique setting here. And they're driving across the bridge, and he's out there with the chainsaw in the middle of the night. So he starts cutting at the car with the chainsaw. And yes, it is a little absurd, but he's cutting pieces of the car, and Rick the Prick takes out his gun, and he shoots him. The corpse head falls to the side, and we see it's Leatherface. And he's swinging the chainsaw, and he ends up cutting the driver's head in half. We get this goofy looking scene with these special effects where the driver's like this. It kind of looked like something out of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and this blood is just squirting out of the top of his head. But they end up wrecking the car, and all of this happens on the air with Stretch. So she hears the entire thing happening. She's freaked out about this. And the next day we see Dennis Hopper arrive, who is Lefty, and he's investigating the crash. He's actually looking for the killer of his brother's kids. Well, technically, Sally didn't die. I mean, she just kind of went crazy, but she's not dead. But Franklin did die. And he was a ranger. He wants to put the story in the papers, maybe talk to some witnesses. He's trying to do his own investigation here. Stretch actually goes to see Lefty with the tape, and for some reason he doesn't want her help. I don't know what the scene, like what the point of the scene was. I mean, she tells him she has evidence here, and he's apparently been looking for all these years, and he doesn't even want to hear the tape. Like, I don't understand that, but anyways, back to Stretch. Her and her radio partner, LG, are covering the chili cook-off. And Drayton Sawyer, who is the store owner from the first movie, and this guy is so good at acting crazy, but he actually wins the chili cook-off. The secret ingredient is people. So Dennis Hopper, he goes to a store and he buys a gigantic chainsaw and 2 little chainsaws. He's kind of swinging like knives or something. And he buys these weapons for his revenge. And he goes back to see Stretch and he asks her to play the tape on the air. He believes the killers are in this area, so now he wants her help. So she does. She agrees. She plays it once every hour. And Drayton gets a call on his way home that the radio station's playing this tape, and it's of the killings, and he's freaking out about this. He's doing his typical crazy, "Oh, you damn sons of bitches, you messed up big time now," and he was very good in this. So LG, that night at the radio station, I think they said it was after midnight, Stretch is in there. She's been playing the tape. LG leaves to go get some coffee. And Stretch hears a noise. She's in the radio station by herself. She hears a noise. She goes downstairs to the office area, I guess. And we see Chop Top, who is Bill Moseley, who did an awesome job with this character. So good. And Chop Top is like this retro 60s... it's hard to explain, but he's like this crazy guy. He's got this coat hanger with him all the time, and he's always got a lighter, and he's heating up the end of it, and he's always scratching the top of his head with this thing. And he's got this really bad wig on, his what he calls his Sonny Bono wig. And he requests that she play the tape. He's like, "Oh, I really love that song. You got to play that tape again." So she's instantly freaked out by this guy, not to mention he looks insanely creepy. So he asks her to play the tape, and Leatherface pops out of the record room. And this always gets me when he pops out of here. So he jumps out of this record room, and he's got the chainsaw going, and he hits Chop Top in the head, and he exposes this metal plate that he has on his head. It's played by a different guy, but I always assumed Chop Top was the hitchhiker from the first movie. He got hit by the truck at the end, and that's why he has a metal plate now, but he does a lot of the same things. He cuts himself, he uses the little razor thing and cuts at Stretch and stuff like that, so I definitely think he's supposed to be the hitchhiker. But he gets his plate cut, and Leatherface runs up after Stretch. She locks herself in this storage room or something and slides this metal door behind her, locking Leatherface out. And Chop Top says, "Dog will hunt. Get that bitch, Leatherface. Dog will hunt." And he was just really good with his lines here. So LG returns and he sees the truck outside. So he's instantly thinking, what's going on in here? And he sees Chop Top digging through the records. And Chop Top says, "Lick my plate, you dog dick." And he gives him the finger. Leatherface jumps out of nowhere, knocks LG over, and then Chop Top just beats him in the head with a hammer. Pretty gruesome scene. So Leatherface tries to get in the storage room to get to Stretch again, and he can't get in, so it gets really quiet, and then he just busts through the wall on the other side. This scares Stretch, but he stops the chainsaw. He's actually attracted to her, so she tries to do the mind games. She's like, oh, you're good, you're the best, and trying to, like, survive, basically. Say whatever she has to so this guy doesn't kill her. So Leatherface just, he turns the chainsaw back on. He wrecks the radio station, but he doesn't kill her. He leaves her alone. And before he leaves, he makes these weird thrusting motions with the chainsaw. It's hilarious. And he's always shaking the thing above his head and making these weird motions. But it's really funny. And he does this throughout the entire movie. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about with these thrusting motions. But he leaves her alive, so Leatherface and Chop Top leave with LG's body. Lefty is late, so Stretch decides she's going to follow these guys on her own. And she follows them to their hideout, which is an abandoned amusement park. Pretty unique setting for a movie like this. And Lefty shows up. She doesn't know it's him, so she gets freaked out. Finally, he says, Stretch, it's me. And she falls into this hole, I guess maybe a trap or a weak tunnel underneath the park. And she's hanging on. Lefty tries to save her. He basically tells her he was using her as bait. And she loses her grip and falls down into the tunnels. So Lefty revs up his chainsaws. Actually, I don't even know if he cut them on at this point. And he charges right into the hideout with a battle cry and everything. And it's quiet. No one's in the entrance. So, let's see what he does here. So he's looking around and he sees a painting conveniently bleeding from the mouth of the painting. And he kicks it and all these guts come out of the walls. So he starts cutting down pillars saying it's the House of the Devil or the Den of the Devil or something like that. And he starts cutting down all these pillars. He's going to bring it all down. And he just keeps saying that, and he goes through the amusement park cutting down pillars this entire time. Stretch wakes up. She's in the tunnel. She hears Chop Top and Leatherface, so she runs and hides. And Leatherface starts working on LG. And this is probably the most disturbing scene in this movie. Of everything in this movie besides bright lights, big titties, this is the scene I remember. It was just really, really disturbing. Leatherface takes out an electric knife and he starts cutting off like LG's skin. And he cuts pieces off and hangs them up on the meat hooks. And then he cuts off like his face, because Leatherface takes faces of people with, you know, the hair and everything. And he hangs it up. And Stretch hears this, or sees this, and it freaks her out. She makes a little bit of noise, and Leatherface runs over to her, and he sees it's her, so he's not trying to kill her or anything, but he ends up taking LG's face, and who was her friend, and puts it on her, and she keeps trying to take it off, and he's like, ugh, ugh. He doesn't want her to take it off, so he puts the face on her, and then he puts LG's cowboy hat on her. And he dances with her. And it's just really creepy. But it gets worse. So after he's done with this, he ties her up. And he leaves. Leatherface has somewhere to go. They call him or something. And while he's gone, she's freaking out. She's tied up. She's trying to get this face off of her. And she can't reach it because she's tied up. And LG comes back to life. And he's obviously missing the skin on his face. He's missing this huge chunk on his chest. I think his hand has been skinned off. And obviously he's been bashed in the head with a hammer, so he's not in his right state of mind. He's like, ugh. And it's really sad because LG was a nice character. So it is really sad to see this. And when he looks at her, he sees his own face on her. But he knows it's her. And he tries to pick up a knife and cut her free, and I guess because of the injuries he can't really do it, but he finally cuts her free, and then he just dies. And she puts his face back on him and with his cowboy hat and everything. But yes, of everything that happens in this movie, this is easily the most disturbing thing. So she escapes and she runs right past the family. This was another very funny scene to me. She's sneaking around, and then eventually she just runs past him, and Drayton says a booger just ran past or something like that. It was funny, but so she runs right by him. Then it cuts back to Lefty, who finds Franklin from the first movie, his skeleton in the wheelchair with the flashlight still in his hand. I like the fact that they remembered this and that they brought it back in some way, but seriously, why in the hell would this crazy cannibal family keep his body, keep the wheelchair, and not have him lose the flashlight? If they've been running around this entire time, all over Texas, for all these years, why would they keep Franklin's body and just travel with it when they already have Grandpa, Grandma, all these other random corpses they keep? They're going to keep Franklin. So that was a little hard to believe too, but anyway, Stretch gets chased by Leatherface, and the family catches her, of course. She's horrible. And Leatherface refuses to kill her, so Drayton takes this all from him. And Chop Top knocks her out, and she wakes up at the dinner table. So they bring in Grandpa, who actually looks younger in this movie. They say that he's 137, but he's on a liquid diet, so he's fresh. But yeah, Grandpa actually looks younger. They repeat the hammer scene from the first movie with Grandpa, where they put the hammer in his hand, he tries to bash her in the head, and he keeps dropping it. So Drayton picks the hammer up and knocks her out, and then Lefty shows up. He's got his chainsaws, and he's ready to go. And Drayton actually offers him some money. He sees Stretch, and he goes after Drayton with the chainsaw. He cuts him in the ass with it, and then he frees Stretch. He tells her to get out of here. She takes off. This was pretty funny. Drayton hides under the dinner table, and Lefty starts a chainsaw battle with Leatherface. And Chop Top picks up the hammer, runs past Grandpa, puts it in his hand, and then just takes off after Stretch. So I guess he wanted to make sure Grandpa had a way to defend himself if Lefty came his way. But he goes, he's fighting Leatherface, and Lefty stabs Leatherface in the stomach. Some pretty good special effects here, I thought. And Drayton realizes maybe it's just time to give it up. Maybe it's over, and we should just end it. So he takes out a grenade, and he pulls it, and I guess that's it. That's the end of everyone. Lefty, Leatherface, Grandpa, Drayton. The only one left now is Chop Top, and he's chasing Stretch. They climb up this structure in the amusement park, and they climb to the top of it. He's cutting her with the razor like the hitchhiker from the first movie. And Stretch finds the shrine to Grandma, who has a chainsaw on her lap. And she picks it up, and she cuts Chop Top down the middle, and he falls off the cliff, the side of this structure. And then Stretch raises the chainsaw and does her own Leatherface Gigi Allen dance, and that was the end of the movie. So yeah, this is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I do enjoy this movie. It does have a lot of goofy, funny moments, but they're good. And it still has a lot of disturbing moments. So I do like this movie. I think it's a good, it deserves a place in the series for sure. And I don't really have any fond memories of 3. I only watched that one time, and I can't really remember much. I remember something about bear traps. So yeah, I've only watched 3 one time, and I've seen this one at least like 4. But yeah, that's it. I recommend Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I'll be back next week with part 3. So hope you guys like this video. Leave your thoughts on this movie in the comments below, and thanks for watching. Bye.